around, don't disregard it. Sweep you off the ground, show you what heart is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can knock it. Let's get it started, it's the hardest. Talk around, don't disregard it. Sweep you off the ground, show you what heart is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can knock it. Let's get it started. Yeah,
get your boots ready. We're about to go on a trip where we wrestle, nobody settling or calling it quits. You're here for the grit, betcha this stuff is amazing. You're stumbling, welcome to the bump in the apron. Step into it, the hardest part of the ring. Here to bring fun, yeah, in this art he is king. It's the best thing, making sure you don't tap out. Don't go soft with the hardest podcast out. And it's not just another one, it's clear. Off the rest, in this content, none contest. Take the nonsense off the steps. You know it's nothing but pure gems when it's coming off the chest. Get it? Now it's time to sit and relax. Get your mind blown away, ain't no skipping this track. Have you paying more attention, no listening gap. Get everything I ever wanted, no giving it back. Yeah.
Ooh, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Apron Bump Podcast. I'm your host, the hardest part of that there ring. Welcome to another episode of some WCW action. The last WCW pay-per-view of 1995. Actually, if you've been following the old Apron Bump, you'll know that this is the final pay-per-view of 1995 period. We covered ECW Holiday Hell. We covered WWF Seasons Beatings. And now we got Starrcade 1995. Leaving 1995 in the dust. Boy howdy. What a dreadful fucking year 1995 was. And I like... Here, let me throw this one at you real quick. Let me throw this one up your ass before we move on here. 1995, there's a lot to talk about, right? Even though it seems like everything happened, but also nothing happened. 1995 had a lot of stuff happened. Not necessarily good or bad. A lot of bad. But I've been thinking about doing like a retrospective type of episode. Kind of comparing WCW, WWF, ECW. Maybe doing like a YouTube live stream of sorts or something. I don't know. Just I'm kind of, flicking my pecker around thinking about that. So let me know what you think. Let me write your mail to the last house on the left, Parts Unknown USA. So send all your mail there. Let me know what your opinions are, and or send me a DM down here. Right? I always forget. Like I put the shit on the screen, and I can just say, "Hey, look at what show we're watching. Look at what show we're recapping. Check out these socials." Which side's it on? I don't know. But anyways. But yeah, let me know what you think about that. And Starrcade 1995, I wouldn't say it's very representative of the year that WCW had. And we kind of talk about this on the podcast. Probably one of their better pay-per-views they put out, WCW did, this year. A lot of that is because this pay-per-view revolves around, it's a revolving door of sorts, a revolving forbidden door, huh? If I hear one more person saying forbidden door, I'm going to their house and I'm going to open up all of their loaves of bread and take out the bottom butt of the bread and touch every piece on the way down. Just so they don't even know that they open up the bread, like why is my bread all cattywampus and why does it taste like Kyle Bird's asshole? That's the only what are we talking about here? Starrcade 1995. It is Forbidden Door season in WCW. We have a 7-match series, WCW versus New Japan Pro Wrestling. Sound familiar? And lots of legends in Japanese wrestling on this show, which is very interesting to see. You also, on the WCW side, of course, you got your Macho Mans, your Stings. You got Eddie Guerrero's in there. The Wunderkind, Alex Wright, is in there. All the faces you love to see. On top of that, we also have a triangle match between Ric Flair, Lex Luger, and Sting. The winner of that triangle match goes on into the main event to face the world champion, the Macho Man, Randy Savage. So high stakes all over this show. Your hilarious promos, the ridiculous commentary. Does anyone get set on fire or anything in this show? I'm trying to think of what else happened here. You just got very animated Japanese villains. It's like right out of a Godzilla movie. Very interesting show, to say the least. But I'm going to quit babbling here. Let's get into it. But first, let me give a shout out to my guest, Ted, from the Heel Truth podcast. You might know Ted as the Hillbilly Heel. Awesome podcast Ted has. He gets into a lot of heel-based topics, as per the title of the podcast. He, for example, he had me on one of his episodes. He was kind enough to bring me on, and we talked about modern heels versus old school heels, kind of the differences in heels and how it's progressed over time, what heels have to do nowadays that maybe they didn't get away with back then, and vice versa. It was a fun talk with Ted, and if nothing else, go check out that episode. If you want to dip your toes into his podcast, go check it out. But he has a ton of great topics that he gets into: monster heels, underrated heels, heel managers. He'll even give spotlights to certain wrestlers like Ric Flair, like Magnum TA, like a little other stuff like that. He's an old school guy, so he has a lot of knowledge, and he does it in a very entertaining way, as you'll see on this episode. So go check out Ted. Follow him on Twitter at Hillbilly Heel. All of his socials, all of his info in the description below. Wherever you find podcasts is where you can find the Heel Truth. So go check out my boy Ted. And hey, if you like this type of stuff, maybe you're just jumping in, maybe you're a first-time bumper. You're like, gee whiz, Kyle, you're talking a lot about this 1995 nonsense. You make it out to seem like it's really, really the shits. That couldn't possibly be the truth. Well, hypothetical listener, let me tell you something. Let me tell you what to do. Sorry, that was really aggressive. I feel like I'm in a WCW promo here. Let me tell you something. You see, go to apronbump.com. Go to apronbump.com. Go to the episodes tab at the top. And you can select any promotion, any era, I cover a lot of stuff on this podcast, a wide breadth of topics, ranging from the wrestling, the pure wrestling of Ring of Honor and Progress Wrestling, to the shenanigans of WCW and TNA, to the high points of the Attitude Era and the Ruthless Aggression, to the low points of the New Generation Era and ECW. Daddy covers it all. I can't get out of promo mode. All right. But go to apronbump.com, hit the episodes tab, and you can select Wrestling Wars of the 90s, and that'll bring you to all of the WWF, WCW, and ECW shows that I've covered, all chronologically. Binge away. So do that. And yeah, I think it's about time we start talking some wrestling, huh? Let's get funky like a monkey, like one of the commentators on this show would say. WCW Starrcade, 1995, with myself and Ted, the Hillbilly Heel from the Heel Truth podcast.
Yeah, we've had my son's had to use the laptop, so.
No worries.
He's gone tonight, of course.
Right. No worries. As long as I get to see that beautiful mug, that's all I ask. But yeah, man. So you got a chance to check out Starrcade 95?
Oh yeah, it had been a while, but I went back and watched it there.
Yeah. Were you following WCW during this time period?
Oh gosh, yeah.
Yeah. Is it? Yeah. I feel like this is kind of like your. Would you say that's like your peak wrestling fandom, or maybe close to it?
Really, what I consider my glory years was 85 through 87.
Okay. And that's like Hacksaw, or not Hacksaw. Who's the big country guy? Haystacks Calhoun.
No,
that's something.
oh, it It was all NWA, pre WCW, Jim Crockett Promotions, the
Right.
original Four Horsemen, Dusty, Magnum, all that. Those were my glory years.
Right, right, of course. Yeah, I was born in 93. So anything before the 90s might as well be the Romans and the gladiators fighting lions and all that stuff. So but it's cool. No, that's cool. But yeah, Starrcade 95, a little bit of a I guess an untraditional type of WCW show, really revolving around the World Cup of Wrestling. So we got WCW versus New Japan Pro Wrestling. It's a best of 7, so there's 7 matches. It's each singles matches. You get one WCW guy, one New Japan guy. I guess overall, that concept. What'd you think of that concept? You know, kind of the interpromotional stuff and bringing in New Japan and
Well, to me, on a grand scale, I thought it was pretty good.
yeah,
You know, there'd always been a working relationship between Japan and the NWA, so it was no surprise. And then you could tell with Nitro getting ready to start in '96 and Eric Bischoff wanting to bring in all these Japanese wrestlers that he was
Mhm.
starting to play with something there with that to, I guess, maybe get the fans ready for it and to sort of play around with it some.
Mhm. Yeah, Nitro actually started in late '95. So at this point, it has already started. It's very early though, so they're still kind of getting their feet under them a little bit. Still definitely in the building phases. But yeah,
Yeah.
to your point, New Japan would go on to be, or I guess just Japanese wrestling in general, international wrestling would go on to be a big part of WCW. A lot in the cruiserweight division, mainly I feel like, but otherwise as well. Like this is kind of like the opening those that forbidden door. You know how the kids
Yeah.
like to say.
Forbidden Door.
The WCW did the forbidden door before Tony Khan even was before AEW was even a gleam in his eye. So.
Right.
But yeah, man. So just getting right to the show, I guess. First of all, it's a commentary team. As always, we got Tony Schiavone and Bobby the Brain Heenan, but special third mic, Dusty Rhodes. And yeah, what'd you think of this trio on the sticks on commentary?
I enjoyed it when Dusty was on there with Bobby and them.
Yeah.
It was pretty entertaining. I always enjoyed Tony and Bobby. The one thing I did notice, and now looking back years ago, I didn't think about it, but Tony Schiavone would just, now thanks to Excalibur, he actually knows what some of these moves are. But back then, some of those moves, he was just saying that was a devastating maneuver or something like that.
Yeah.
And it was funny because he didn't know all the names like he does now. So I thought that was real neat.
Well, to be fair, anytime Tony tried to name a move, he would get scolded by Dusty Rhodes.
Yeah. Yeah, the mafia kick and all that.
Ain't got nothing to do with the mafia. Yes. All right, Dusty. That's the name of the move. The German suplex. What? Well, we're not Germany. We're now. It's like that's sure, Dusty. Whatever you say. A suplex. Everything's a suplex or a kick. That's all. That's all we say on commentary, I guess. But man, speaking of suplexes and kicks, we got plenty of those in this opening match. It is the first match of the World Cup of Wrestling. We got Jushin Thunder Liger versus Chris Benoit. And Liger, I feel like already a legend, even in '95, especially in the juniors division in New Japan. And he's accompanied by Sonny Ono, which I believe everybody from New Japan is accompanied by Sonny Ono. And first of all, I guess before we get into the match, the dynamic of like the Japanese wrestlers versus the WCW wrestlers, they're definitely portraying New Japan as the heel faction. And they even like get into more detail with like the promos throughout the show with Sonny Ono and stuff. What'd you think about that? Because even like when heel WCW wrestlers would wrestle like Lex Luger, they'd be the baby faces in the match just because they're facing the dirty foreign heels, which we talked a lot about on your show. What'd you think about that dynamic, that face heel dynamic?
Yeah, and I thought the same thing. Like the first thing that came to my mind when I was rewatching this was what me and you had talked about when you was on my show was
Yeah.
that, still back in the '90s, you had that dynamic to where patriotism and all you had to do was be a foreign person, and automatically you were the heel.
A little Japanese flag on a chopstick. That's all you need.
Hmm.
Yeah. The pure element of them being foreign is enough to get people to boo them, I guess. It's simpler time.
Yes.
Simpler time. But then we got Benoit, who is not American either, by the way, but he's a member of he's a member of the Horsemen at this point, newly a member, which so he's with Pillman, Flair, and Arn Anderson, and Pillman leaves not too long after this, so I don't really know. I think Benoit still remains in the Horsemen, if I'm correct, right? When Pillman leaves.
Yes. Hmm.
So they've obviously got a lot of stock in Benoit. They've seen him in Japan and ECW, wherever else he's wrestled. So good start for him, and an opening match against a legend in Japan. So high stakes here. And man, this match, I feel like, set the bar very high for the night. And I don't know if any other match on this card reached that height.
No, I agree. This to me was, as far as just the in-ring ability, was probably the match of the night. Because I think from what I remember when Benoit had been in Japan, so I think they'd faced each other several times before, so they knew each other, and it was just a good dynamic and just a great match.
Yeah. Yeah. The chain wrestling, like just 20 seconds into the match, I'm like, God, this is so good. Because it's night and day between what I've seen from WCW, like in the past year of 95 and 94. A lot of it's like headlocks, and it'll be a janitor versus the babyface, or whatever, foreign heel number 47 versus Hulk Hogan. It's just, chin lock, comeback, finisher, all that stuff. But this felt like, man, there was so much to it. Like I said, the chain wrestling, all the striking was super snug. The counters were really like smooth and all that stuff. Like you said, they faced each other a bunch. So they, of course, had that chemistry, which helped a lot. You have Benoit. Whenever I watch Benoit matches, man, it's just like he has so much intent with everything he does. It's like he tries to kill you with well, that's probably bad phrasing, but he tries to hurt you with every move that he does. Goes for a headbutt, misses. Liger's able to hit the Liger bomb for a 2 count, though, because has a cocky cover, which is funny seeing Liger play the heel here. I don't know how often they do that in Japan, but all I've seen of him is just the baby face that we're just happy to see from Japan. So it was a cool dynamic, I guess, from Liger here. Power bomb from Benoit finally hits the headbutt, but before he can make the pin, the Taskmaster comes out. Kevin Sullivan of the Dungeon of Doom comes out and distracts Benoit, and this allows Liger to hit a Hurricane Rana onto Benoit and roll him up for the win. And so Liger gets the win, and New Japan's up 1-0. And I think Sonny Ono says in a promo later in the show that he basically paid off the Dungeon of Doom to help them out in this tournament. But yeah. Any other thoughts on this match?
Well, first, the Hurricane Rana, as we know it now, I think Tony Schiavone called it a leg head scissors takeover or something like that.
I guess it is.
Yeah, but I expected, now watching it back and knowing how the politics and stuff goes, I could see why. Liger's well beloved. He had his own cartoon show in Japan, stuff like that. So definitely with the politics, it seemed that Benoit would take the fall here, and they tried to, him being the new Horseman, let's make it a little bit wonky finish there with the distraction. So it was what it was. I wouldn't have minded if it would have been a clean pin because the match was just so good.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, like you said, politics definitely has a part really in this whole show. There's one match in particular. I'm like, oh god, of course, um, but yeah, great match there. Great way to open the show. Could watch these two wrestle every day. But speaking of which, another guy I could watch wrestle every day is Eddie Guerrero, who has a little promo after the match with Mean Gene Okerlund. And man, old school 1995 Eddie Guerrero is such a departure from the Latino Heat
Yeah.
character that he would adopt later in his career. Just very, plucky white meat baby face. Like, oh, I'm gonna go out there, give it my all. Like he barely even has an accent or anything. He's like, look, I'm gonna go out there. I'm gonna wrestle. I'm gonna give it 110%, and then hopefully I'll get the win. So, what do you think of this version of Eddie Guerrero?
Well, and that's the thing. I guess I'm so used to heel Eddie Guerrero,
Mhm.
I'd forgotten what a babyface Eddie Guerrero early 90s or mid 90s sounded like. And I'm like, this is not very good at all. I'm not enjoying this. I understand where you're trying to come, but no, I just didn't care much for it. But I
Mhm.
understand what he was trying to do. But it's like, no, you're going to evolve into a great superstar one day, Eddie.
Yes.
You will have to you will have to lie, cheat, and steal to get there, but you will.
You might have to have a little relationship with China. A few bumps and potholes along the way, but you'll get there. You'll get there, Eddie.
Yeah.
Um, but so after that,
Custody battle.
yeah, you might have to fight for a child in a ladder match. But it is what it is. But yeah, I mean, they were pretty much all in with Eddie because Eddie even said it in this promo that he's like, "Look, there was only 7 people picked from WCW's entire roster to be in this tournament, and I'm one of them." So that says a lot. And in the previous pay per view, the World War III match, he was in the final 10. So I mean, they obviously see a lot in him, just like they did in Benoit. They see a lot in Eddie, and can't blame them. Can't blame them for that. Um, but maybe somebody they didn't see as much in, maybe they did, I don't know, is Alex Wright, the Wunderkind, versus the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Champion, Koji Kanemoto. And I believe the title is on the line in this match as well, in addition to it being a World Cup match. So Kanemoto, I don't know if I've ever seen any of his matches. I did a little research on him. He hasn't seemed to have a very significant career. I think he got hot in New Japan during their leaner years. So maybe he just didn't make a lot of noise over there.
Yeah.
I know he was like in the finals or the semifinals of a G1 one year or something. So he was pretty involved in that mix. There's just nobody was really watching it, I guess. But Kanemoto, I mean, I was really impressed by him. I mean, he was very I guess he has a judo background, so he's very experienced in the martial arts and stuff. And it was very clear with all the kicks he was throwing. It's like this dude did not learn kicks in pro wrestling school. He knows how to kick a guy's heart through his chest. Like there were some brutal kicks in this match. Fun submissions and stuff. And then you have Alex Wright, who I don't know how old he is. He's very young, probably like 19, 20 years old here from Germany. And but yeah, there's fun facts about this match. First time that the IWGP Junior Heavyweight title has been defended in the United States, which is a fun little addition to
Oh,
this
okay.
show.
Didn't know that.
I didn't either. But yeah, no dancing, not a lot of dancing from Alex Wright in his entrance. So he must mean business. And but yeah, I would say it was maybe not as good as the opener, but watching these guys, I mean, Alex Wright's pretty hungry at this point, I feel like, and Kanemoto was just fascinating to watch. So I don't know, what were your thoughts on this match?
Um, Same thing. I didn't know all the background about Kaji Moto there.
Yeah.
Um, but Alex Wright was one of those. He had so much potential, and it was just like, what happened? It's one of those what ifs
Mhm.
that you wonder about. I don't know if it was the dancing, a little bit of the gimmick that he never could shed, but his in ring stuff was always great. I thought. The only problem I had with the match was the finish because
Mm.
the way the roll up was almost similar to the Benoit and Liger match.
Mm.
It was a little bit different variation, but you still had this back and forth, and then you had the way the roll up is. And I thought maybe they should have gave a different finish
Right.
for the match, but
Yeah. But to your earlier point, maybe all these like out of nowhere roll up pins are just to kind of save face for the loser. It's like you could almost kind of pin it as like a fluky win kind of deal. But yeah, I'm with you. It was very similar. But yeah, on the way there, not too much to it. This is where I noted how Dusty was livid when Tony Schiavone called a suplex a German suplex. Even though it's a German doing it, like it's all there. But like, all right, Dusty, I guess it's
right. Yeah.
Must be the black cowboy hat. I guess those people don't like when you call moves by their name, but it's a whole other episode in itself. But got a slingshot splash by Alex Wright. He goes for a missile drop kick off the top rope, but Koji hits him with a drop kick out of midair. And they actually flip-flop that later in the match where Koji goes for a missile drop kick and Alex Wright hits him with the drop kick to give him a little anti-air action. So good a little bit of story in this short-ish match. But ultimately, like you said, Alex Wright goes for like a springboard of some sorts off the top rope, but Koji trips him up. Alex Wright goes face first into the top turnbuckle, and then Koji just jackknife pins him for the quick win. So 1, 2, 3, and New Japan is up 2-0. And I don't know. I feel like this match, it felt like it was good, but it seemed like the crowd didn't really care a lot about it.
Yeah, it seemed like they were more into the first match than this one. And I don't know, again, if it was at least with, Benoit being a horseman.
Yeah.
Even though the horsemen were heels, they were still cool heels and you could get behind them. So it was like, do we really want to get behind Alex Wright or not? So, because again, it's supposed to be America against Japan and he's a German. So I don't know if that played into the Nashville crowd's thoughts or not.
Yeah, there have been no Americans so far in this show. I don't know. Do you think Alex Wright just didn't do enough dancing? Do you think if he danced more, the crowd would have been more with him?
He may have if he'd have done more on his gimmick. And then that's the thing. Was he told to go out and play it more serious, or maybe that was a decision he made? But I agree. The match, a lot of good moves, counter moves, but it was like the crowd was a little bit dead on this one.
Yeah, for sure. I forget what is Alex Wright? What does his dance look like again? I forget.
The only dance I can do is the up here. Slow white man chuckle.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
And a slow dance where I just move back and forth. Yeah. Like I'm boxing. That's about it.
I'm too I relate too much to that. Don't you worry. I'm right there with you. Find a wall, put your back to it, and just let it happen. But speaking of against the wall, WCW is against the wall here. Losing 2-0 against New Japan at this point. And at this point, we get a little promo with Sonny Ono backstage with Mean Gene Okerlund when Sonny basically, he's like, hey, we're going to win and buy WCW. It's felt like just a cheesy villain out of a James Bond movie, but it's like, what? I appreciate that there's like some story to it. It's not just like a wrestling for the sake of wrestling kind of thing. I think it's at this point where he says that he bought the services of the Dungeon of Doom, which I don't think they interfere. I don't think they played any part in the rest of the show. Right? Or am I misremembering?
No, it was just that one match.
So it must have not paid him a lot. Must have been a cheapskate, this Sonny Ono. But after that, so we open the show with two very good matches of junior heavyweight action. And the third World Cup match, something a little different. We got Lex Luger versus Masahiro Chono. And Chono, I guess, is I don't know if he invented the STF or if he's just the master of it, but it's a little fun fact that I learned on this show. And that was really my only note on this match. He had a really nasty looking STF that looked good, but then Luger just wins with I think Chono comes off the top rope with something, and Luger hits him with an elbow, and then just locks him in the torture rack for the win. Felt like this match lasted like 30 seconds, but the less is more with Lex, I guess.
And I thought this was odd too that they would have made Chono maybe would have let it last a little longer because it was just, what was it? Was it early 95 or 94 when he actually won the WCW title from Flair?
That would have been maybe early 94, maybe 93.
Yeah. So, for him to have held that belt when they'd done the cross promotional stuff before, I thought maybe they would have let him go a little bit longer, but maybe they were letting Luger go for a break since he was going to have to wrestle twice. I don't know.
Yeah, Chono, I mean, this is a guy that I'm familiar with, or at least I've heard the name. So he's definitely a big deal in New Japan. And like you said, has even held WCW World Title Gold. So yeah, that's a good point. It's weird that the first definitive loss is Chono here, losing to Lex Luger by submission. But I guess Lex is in the main event, like you said. Maybe got to preserve him a little bit, and that's kind of a theme here. We'll see that later in Sting's match as well, and Macho Man's. But yeah, so WCW gets the win here. So now it's 2-1 New Japan, and after that we got Sting backstage with Mean Gene Okerlund. All I gotta say is, and then a bunch of yelling and typical Sting. What do you think of Sting's promo abilities here at this time period?
They were pretty much all the same since he first came into WCW. It was a lot of yelling, just a lot of excitement. Even now, in AEW, the quasi crow Sting that he is now, when he gets a little excited or he'll say something, try to be dark and ominous, you can still see a little smile, try to crack up behind the makeup. You just can't help it. You can take the Sting out of the Surfer, but you can't take the Surfer out of the Sting.
Man, those are wise words. Wise words. But you're totally right. Yeah, I mean, he's there's definitely always like a hint of like you could tell he knows it's ridiculous, but he just keeps on powering through. Honestly, not a bad promo here from him. I mean, all the promos on this show, there's not a ton of substance to them. Like you said, it's a bunch of yelling and just kind of confirming the storylines. And Sting is in a triangle match later in the show, which I don't know if I've mentioned. So we have all these World Cup matches, and then we have a triangle match, and the winner of that triangle match will go on to face Macho Man for the world title in the main event. So, and Sting will be in that triangle match, and he's facing off against Ric Flair and Lex Luger. And Sting and Luger have been friends, and they've been enemies. So it's like, oh, what side is he on kind of deal. So pretty much just pounding that into as the storyline here for the audience. But and then also Sting will be facing Kensuke Sasaki in the last World Cup match, and Sasaki beat him for the U.S. title. So there's some storyline threads intertwined through all of this. So, but after that, we got the fourth World Cup of Wrestling match. We got Johnny B. Bad, accompanied to the ring by Kimberly, who he just recently stole from DDP, versus Masa Saito. Man, Masa Saito. This man has no neck, but he is a pleasure to watch. What'd you think of this match?
I thought it was a good combination because Johnny B. Bad is still a little green, and Saito has been around a long time. And I think his style with the less, aerial moves and more of the hard hitting went good with Johnny B. Bad to where he could lead him through the match.
Yeah.
So I do think they chose a good opponent for on that.
Yeah. Yeah, Masa Saito, he's a mean-looking fella. And those chops, those strikes he was throwing, brutal looking. With all the suplexes, of course, the Saito suplex and all that. But I should mention the entrance. So, like I said, Johnny comes out with Kimberly. And Kim's out there. Like I said, she was with DDP for the longest time. Was getting, verbally abused by DDP. So they had a match. Johnny and DDP did at the last pay-per-view, and the winner got Kim's services, which Johnny B. Bad won. So now Kimberly's out there. She also has a bad blaster along with Johnny B. Bad. So dual bad blasters. That's worth the price of admission right there. and she's in the ring. Sonny Ono, of course, is with Saito, as he, like I said, he's with all the Japanese guys, and he gets in there. He's like, "This is what's wrong with America. This sport is just for men." And then Kimberly takes the mic and just blows my eardrums out. First of all, her voice is it's a rough one. But she's like, "Oh, this sport's just for men? Well, what are you doing here?" Calling Sonny a lady, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, not a lot to this match other than Saito just pummeling Johnny B. Bad. And ultimately, Johnny gets thrown over the top rope by Saito, leading to a disqualification via over the top rope. So Johnny B. Bad wins in a rule that I feel like hasn't been applied in WCW in like a year or so since I've been watching this. It's like they only apply it when they want to apply it. But man, going into '96 and this is still a rule. This is mind blowing to me.
And see, that's the thing. I'd forgot about it also because I thought I couldn't remember what year they finally got rid of it, but it was a mainstay in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you went over the top rope and you've, forcefully did it and it wouldn't through your momentum, you would get disqualified. So, many heel champions would use that to hold on to the belt. Just throw the guy over the top rope, you get disqualified, you get to keep the belt. So I'd seen it used many, many times throughout the 80s. And when I rewatched this, I forgot. I was like, oh, I thought they'd already got rid of that. But here they used it. And again, I think that was just one of those political finishes. So,
Is because you were watching in the 80s, so maybe you have a different perspective on it than I do. Has the over the top rope rule ever not been ridiculous? Or did it like make sense to you as you were watching?
Well, when that was all you knew, then you didn't think twice about it. You just thought that's the way it was. This is the way life is. If you throw them over the top rope, because see, the other thing was you didn't have all these over the top rope dives and things like that. You would have somebody come up on the turnbuckle and jump off to the outside, but those were so few and far between. And then I also think it went back to the battle royale, the over the top rope battle royal. So it was like the way you eliminated your man was over the top rope. So I think they just sort of kept that vibe going there. And and then it was like, because I often watch wrestling today and, my mind wanders back about like, oh, you can just throw people over the top rope. You can jump over the top rope. You can somersault over the top rope. All this stuff that people had no idea that would ever be done. Because to us back in the day, the off the top rope flying body press. That was a big move.
The good old days. The good old days when it meant something.
Yeah. I still remember seeing a bootleg copy of when Snuka come off the top of the cage onto Don Morocco. And that would just blew everybody's mind.
Yeah.
That he would jump off the top of a cage, and it's like, it's like, now hold my beer. let me show you what I can do now.
Yeah. Now it's just a cut off in between move that you'll see on every Wednesday.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is what it is. But yeah, so 2-2. Again, another political finish, I suppose, to your point. But we have the fifth match of the World Cup of Wrestling. We got Eddie Guerrero versus Shinjiro Otani. And I saw Shinjiro Otani's name. I was like, why does it seem so familiar? And then I remembered he suffered like a brutal injury a little over a year ago. It was like a spine injury. Don't know. I mean, I looked a little bit into it. Last I heard, he got surgery and then he was kind of rehabbing. I don't know if you know about this or have any other notes about it, but
no.
But yeah, that's That was the first thing I thought when watching this match. But we got a very young version of Otani here against, like we mentioned earlier, a very younger, greener version of Eddie Guerrero. Not green, I guess, probably the wrong word. He's been wrestling for probably 20 years at this point, and he's only 20 years old.
Yeah.
But, yeah. But yeah, that kind of brings. I was thinking as I was watching this show has allowed me to watch a lot of Japanese wrestlers that I've like always heard of, but never really sat down to watch. Like I never really sat down to watch a Chono match or a Saito match. So for that reason, I mean, I enjoyed watching this show, like because the experience of just witnessing these new wrestlers, at least to me, was fun. But Otani out here, the black tights, black boots, looking like a young boy out here, doing a lot of springboards. That was like felt like the majority of the match is Otani just doing springboard drop kicks, and then he did a springboard splash to the outside. And then back in the ring, you got Eddie fighting back with a splash mountain power bomb for a 2 count. Otani locks in a heel hook, which I don't remember what Tony Schiavone called it, but it was not a heel hook, is what he said. He's got a leg grabber hold twist. We got Eddie busting out a springboard cross body to the outside as well. But Otani fights back on the outside, rolls Eddie in the ring, and then hits a nasty springboard drop kick to the back of Eddie's head, and then goes for a power bomb. Otani does, but Eddie reverses it into a roll up, and then Otani reverses that roll up into another roll up for the win. So kind of running theme here, a lot of roll up victories on this show, and Otani is the next one. So making it 3-2 New Japan. But this match is pretty fun, I guess. I guess compared to maybe some of the other matches, maybe not as good. But for WCW, this fast-paced style is a breath of fresh air, I thought.
Yeah, and again, I think this was, and like I said, I don't know, but I think this was really a test for this pace.
Mm-hmm.
Eric Bischoff to see as Nitro would go forward in that cruiserweight division to see what kind of reaction it would get. Just my opinion. I don't know, but I do think it was something because, you had all these other storylines, but this took the focus of the pay-per-view. And, again, with the political stuff, you allow the youngest stars that are up and comers, you allow them to take the pin, so you got your established guys can win, and they're showing what they're doing. Especially the first match, the fans were really into it. So we would see this theme as Nitro would go forward with this cruiserweight division, because just about every Nitro you would just sort of like they do today, you open up with that high-paced, fast match that gets the crowd going to set the tone for it.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, like I said, Nitro's still early in their days here. They haven't introduced the cruiserweight division yet, no title. But yeah, like you said, this probably is a test for that style. I mean, we've seen people like Benoit and Eddie on Nitro. We've also seen like Dean Malenko and other, New Japan guys that are in that cruiserweight kind of build here. So, yeah, very much like I said, night and day from 94, 95, when all the matches felt like it was like Boss Man versus Vader, and you got William Regal versus the Brutus Beefcake, and like it's just those kind of matches. So, Macho Man over here, he says he's backstage with Mean Gene, classic Macho Man here, and he alludes to the suspension, or maybe it's Gene does, of Hulk Hogan. So Hogan, he lost the title at World War III. He was cool with Macho Man, but at some point he came in on Nitro and attacked a couple of refs with steel chairs, and they suspended him for I don't know how long, but he was not on this show, and they're basically acknowledging that to, I guess, specify why Hogan's not here. But yeah, well, what are your thoughts on no Hogan on a big pay-per-view like Starrcade?
I'm thinking that I remember later on it was odd at the time, but I think years later I'd heard that it was either an injury or he was doing a TV show or a movie.
Was he doing what was it, Mr. Nanny?
I don't remember, but I think that was the reason they wrote him off. But it was odd for him at this time not to be on a pay-per-view.
Hmm.
But I also remember Eric Bischoff talking about on his podcast um, when Hogan initially signed with WCW. The whole part of it was getting into more films and TV series, and that was part of the thing through Turner and all that kind of stuff. Part of the negotiations to set him up more Hollywood
Yeah.
stuff.
Do you have any favorite Hogan movies or TV shows?
Not really.
I don't know if I've seen any
uh,
personally.
I guess I'll go back to the OG with Rocky 3 when he made that debut as Thunder Lips.
Was that his debut? I think that's the only time I've seen Hogan in a movie is Rocky 3.
I mean, he may have been in something B before that, but that the
Yeah,
big movie that really put him on the map. We'll put it that way.
I guess. Was he ever on the map? I don't know. What was the movie with Zeus? No Holds Barred. That's a good one, right?
No holds barred, yeah, yeah. And then there was some spy movie too. I think he was in.
Yeah, man, just gold after gold after gold from Mr. Hogan. Um, but Hulk's not here. But you know who is? Is Tenzan facing off against Randy Savage here in the 6th World Cup match. So New Japan's winning 3-2. So if New Japan wins here, they win the whole thing. But the world champion of WCW is here. And even though Tenzan kind of dominates the beginning with a bunch of strikes and elbows and kicks and chokes and stuff like that, Savage is able to hit him with a suplex from outside of the ring in, kind of. He kind of botches it, but he also has the injured arms. I don't know if they're trying to put that over or
Yeah.
not. But then Savage hits the elbow for the win. Another really quick match, it felt like. But again, Savage has another match, so I get maybe they're just preserving him. But yeah, pretty cut and dry win here for Savage. What'd you think about it?
Yeah, I thought this was odd. I mean, I understand them wanting their big names, but with him having the world championship match, I guess I was trying to think back on the roster who else they could have put, but it was what it was. But it was quick, just to the
Mhm.
point, trying to sell the arm.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Maybe they thought the more Macho Man, the better. But who knows? Yeah, I can't think of anybody else who would have been. I mean, I'm sure there are people, but I guess no one better than Macho Man, I suppose. Uh, but after that, so we are down to game 7 here. So the World Cup of Wrestling comes down to this. We got Sting versus the United States champion, Kensuke Sasaki. I think I mentioned earlier, but Sasaki beat Sting on I believe it was like a separate, I think it was a New Japan show, maybe. It was
yeah,
separate. It was separate from WCW for sure. And so Sasaki's out here with that title. Sting comes out with the big old American flag, and match gets underway again. I feel like there's not a lot to this match. Sasaki locks in the Scorpion Deathlock at one point. I don't know if that's like a move out of his arsenal or if he's just sending a message to Sting. But Sting fights out of it eventually and locks in his own Scorpion Deathlock. And Sasaki taps out, or he submits. And WCW gets the win. They win the World Cup in a pretty anticlimactic fashion, I feel like. I don't know. What do you think?
yeah, that was the thing. I mean, I understand you bring your, Sting in. And like you said, he just lost the U.S. title in Japan a few months before that. Again, political. It was one of those things. I think they said, we'll let you all keep the U.S. belt for a few months. You send him over in a non title. Let Sting beat him so we can win this cup that we're trying to promote.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just a basic Sting match. Again, I don't know if they were trying to preserve him because, Sting had to go and wrestle immediately after this in the triangle match. So It was pretty quick, and it was just there. And like you said, they just all gather in the ring, heels and faces alike, everybody holding the cup because everybody knows that a victory like this unifies America.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, brings the country together. Leave it to
Yep.
Sting. Yeah, it's the, I don't know, the structure of this show. I feel like they almost should have opened with Macho Man, and then maybe the second match is the Sting match. Because hey, how it's laid out here, you have a Macho Man, then a Sting match, then a Sting match, then a Macho Man match. So it's almost like
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, do you is that how you would have done it if you could have built this card?
No, I mean, I like the idea, but I guess the other thing to me that took away from the whole cup thing was you're going to have this pay per view, then you're going to have your regular WCW wrestlers, then for the world title.
Mm-hmm.
It was like um, maybe have some Japanese wrestler that, but again, they probably weren't known as much back then because you didn't really have internet and
Yeah.
access unless you had a satellite as big as your front porch that you could watch Japanese wrestling on.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just an odd. I mean, I like the concept of it, but like you, the structure of it, it was like, okay, we're going to do this cup, then a triangle match, then the world championship. And the way it was set up, I think, like you said there, I think the structure of it could have been a little better.
Yeah. Yeah, it is what it is. But that leads us into that triangle match. So and like I said, the winner of this match becomes the number one contender for the WCW heavyweight title, and they will fight for that title right afterwards. So this triangle match is Sting versus Lex Luger versus Ric Flair. So storyline wise, there's the underlying story of Sting and Luger being friends. Even though Luger's kind of a heel and Sting's a baby face, so the whole dynamic there is kind of up in the air. So this kind of match is structured in a way to where Lex Luger pretty much has to pick a side, and you have Ric Flair, who's always in the title picture. The Four Horsemen's kind of being built up pretty strong at this point, so he's obviously a threat. And then you have Sting, who just brought this country together. So all guys viable contenders for the world title here. And I guess first of all, the triangle match concept, because this is not a triple threat match. This triangle match, basically, you have two people fighting in the ring, and then you have the third guy on the apron, and they have to tag in to get into the match. What do you think about that match concept? I guess.
I did not like it. I just didn't.
Yeah, it's weird.
But it was weird. But then on the other hand, I guess they were trying to, I don't know if it was to rest so the other two could rest.
Mm,
Because, at the beginning of the match, it was pretty much Flair against both of them for quite a long time there. And since he hadn't wrestled yet. But
yeah.
yeah, I didn't really like the concept of it. But, you know, again, I guess they were experimenting, trying something different.
Hmm. Yeah, I was because like you've been watching wrestling longer than I have. Have triple threat matches not really been a thing prior to '95?
Um, Not really. I mean, I thought about that when I was watching it, and I was trying to think. And you didn't really have a lot of multi-man matches. You had your tag matches and your
Hmm.
battle royals. You had a lot of six-man tag matches, but I can't really think. Off the top of my head, I'm sure there was some maybe a triple threat type match, but just nothing that stood out to me that I can remember.
Yeah. Yes. To that point, it might just be a foreign concept. I mean, with us in hindsight, obviously, we can just let's put them all in the ring at the same time. But maybe at the time, it was just kind of a weird, because I know at Bash at the Beach '95, they had a triple threat tag team match, and that was a
Yeah,
mess. They didn't know what they were doing.
yeah.
Clearly, like I said, a foreign concept. They didn't know who could pin who, how many people could be in the ring, how to, it was just like I said, it was just a mess. It was a cluster. So maybe we're still at a point where we're figuring out how to have three people in a match in a cohesive way. Because you think about it, like, okay, it's three guys, they're attacking each other at the same time. Like, how is that going to be a wrestling match that people can follow? But they would eventually figure it out, I guess. But yeah, so it starts out with Sting and Ric Flair, and you got Luger out there on the apron. It's Luger doesn't tag in for it feels like 10 minutes at least.
Yeah.
I guess he needs some time to rest, to your point. But Sting and Flair go at it. You know, your typical Sting and Flair stuff that you would generally see. Um, got a question for you. How many gorilla press slams do you think Ric Flair has taken in his career?
I don't. If I had a nickel for everyone, I'd be filthy rich.
It's
Um,
gotta be
and they said
hundreds.
that, and back in the day when they would call these matches in the ring, and usually the heel would call it, they said Flair would do that all the time. He would just
Yeah.
come up, whoever was Sting or Luger or I think the Giant a few times, and some of these others, and he would like press slam me, and they just do it. And
It's his favorite because Sting did it to him here, and then eventually Luger would tag in. He would tag Sting's back or something, so it'd be Luger versus Flair, and then Luger would press slam him. It's like I feel like every time I watch a Flair match, he's getting picked up over somebody's head and
yeah,
dropped. I don't know how that man and his hip are still remotely moving, much less having a match just like a month or two ago. Uh, but yeah, so Luger and Flair go at it for a bit. Flair even at one point, Sting has the ref distracted, and Flair hits Luger in the legs with a chair. And eventually, Flair tags in Sting. So now we got Sting and Luger going at it, which is kind of the whole basis for this. It's like, oh, what are they going to do? Are they going to be friendly or are they not going to be? And Luger definitely was not, because at first they're kind of just grappling, tie ups, lock ups. And then Luger is the first one to strike with the kick to the stomach. And then he's just striking him. He's stepping on Sting's throat. He, at one point, Sting tries to lock in the Scorpion Deathlock, but Luger fights out with a low blow. So Luger's showing his true colors here. And eventually he locks Sting in the torture rack. But then the ref, I don't know, I guess a gust of wind came in and knocked the ref over. So he's out. He's down. And Flair comes in with a chop block to Luger and sending Luger to the outside. And then Flair picks up Sting and tosses him over the top rope. A dastardly heel. The ref didn't see it, though.
yep,
But then Flair picks up the ref, tells the ref to count them out, and then that ref counts them out. So it is a double count out. So Ric Flair wins because Sting tried to get back in, but Luger grabbed him, and neither guy made the 10 count. So Ric Flair wins in such a Ric Flair fashion, and will go on to face Macho Man in the main event for the title. So what were your thoughts on this match?
of course, it was like you said, one of those finishes. I could see they were setting up more of the storyline with Luger and Sting. Luger pulling on his arm, and is their friendship, and in the immortal words of WWE, can they coexist?
Oh no.
So they sort of have that dynamic.
Mhm.
But yeah, it was one of the screw finishes. But it's a typical Flair match. Flair, whatever you think, he knows how to make people look good. He knows how to bump, and he can wrestle, and he can cheat.
Mhm.
And yeah, it was just a Flair match, and he was ready to go. Again, with the way the structure was, and I thought that was sort of a thing too, was that with Luger and Sting already wrestling two matches, I don't think they're going to be one that will win and wrestle a third match on the night.
Mhm. And yeah, that's an interesting point because Flair did not have a cup match. So he was fresh as
Nope.
a daisy going in that triangle match. But I guess maybe that's the mentality because, spoiler alert, not only would he win the triangle match, but he would win the main event. So I guess maybe that's just a way for them to save face for the baby faces. Maybe that's another way they can put more heat on Flair. It's like, oh, he didn't wrestle as many matches, and that's why he won the world title. Maybe that was the thinking, or I don't know, but it felt just unfair, I guess, as a viewer. But I guess that's the emotion they're trying to pull out of me. So, uh, but yeah, the main event: Randy Savage, the Macho Man, the champion, defending against Ric Flair. At one point, Paul Orndorff comes out because on Nitro, the Horsemen, mainly, I think it was Arn and Pillman, gave Paul
Yeah.
Orndorff a spike pile driver on the concrete floor out by the stage area. And I believe that would pretty much be the way to write Paul Orndorff off just forever. I don't think he had any other matches after that. Am I right on that, or did he have more matches after that?
I can't remember. I'd have to go back and look on that. I can't remember, but it seems like that was getting close to the end of that run there.
Mm-hmm. Maybe he had a few matches here and there, but I think as a full-time guy, I think Orndorff's done here. But he comes out. I don't know if they're building to something, him as a manager or what, but he comes out and kind of just looks at Flair, and then security walks him out. Doesn't really play into the match at all. It's just kind of a weird thing. But the match is what it is. Not the best Macho Man versus Flair match I've ever seen, but both guys have wrestled already, and that's the whole thing. And at one point, because Jimmy Hart's out there with Ric Flair, and Flair grabs his megaphone, tries to hit Savage with it, but Savage steals it and gives him a really terrible looking shot in the head with this megaphone. But it's Ric Flair, so he's gushing blood. So much blood, an obtuse amount of blood from this megaphone. Macho Man's able to hit the elbow on Ric Flair, but it's at this point where the Horsemen come out. Brian Pillman and Chris Benoit, they storm the ring. Macho Man disposes of both these guys. I think he like head clunks them or something, whips one into the other. But this allows Arn Anderson, the enforcer, to sneak up from behind with, I think, his brass knuckles or something. Clocks Macho Man in the face with it. Flair crawls to the cover, soaked in blood, but gets the 1, 2, 3. Ric Flair, for the 12th time, World Heavyweight Champion. And yeah, I guess it wouldn't be a Starrcade without Flair walking out as champion, huh?
Yeah, it was. I remember back in '95 seeing this, and I was elated that you're getting a complete version of the Horseman here,
Mm-hmm.
typical beatdown stuff. Even though it was a little wonky, it was like it took forever,
Yeah.
and the referee was so distracted with Jimmy Hart that it was like, okay, you can't disqualify or see all that's going on behind you. Um, but personally, being a Horseman mark the way I've always been, I was glad to see him. I guess, I was excited. I thought this was going to be a resurgence of the Horsemen, but then, of course, Pillman goes off, and then he's gone, and then you've got the whole Dungeon of Doom against the Horsemen. The NWO show up, and it really wouldn't. But I really would have liked to seen a long run with this four. I
Yeah.
think it would have been really interesting, and I thought it might have been a good mixture of these four if Pillman would have ended up staying around.
Mm-hmm.
I remember at the time being very excited because I was thinking back today. I can't prove it, but my oldest son, who's just a couple years younger than you, he's in his mid 20s. He was born in September.
Mm-hmm.
So this pay per view happened in December, which would have been 9 months before. So there's a possibility. I was so happy he could have been conceived right after Starrcade.
Man, Ric Flair does it for you, huh?
Yes, the Horseman, baby. Yeah, woo!
Is that the noises you make in bed? You just a bunch of Ric Flair.
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you something. Oh man, there's a lot of four
I did.
jokes I can make.
This is a true story.
Please.
When me and my wife got married, when we kissed the bride and we're walking down the aisle and going to the back of the church, a little section of my friends that I went to high school with were at the back of the church there all together. And as we were walking by, and you can even see it on the video we took, I flash them the four horsemen symbol as we go by.
That's amazing. Do you have the yeah, no, that's really all. That's a dream. I mean, I'm getting married myself here in 2 months, so maybe I'll try to get that together with some of my friends. Although my generation's
Or
more
do
of
it
like
too sweet to them or something,
yeah.
you know.
About to say like an NWO, Bullet Club, maybe a DX chop or something. I don't know. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, well, be careful about the crotch chop. That one might be taken by the in-laws a little bit.
No, it's wrestling. It's sports, Grandma. It's okay. I did give my groomsmen wrestling socks to wear. They're like really bright, colorful socks that have wrestlers on it. So that'll be my little.
Cool.
I couldn't get title belts. I didn't get that one over with the bride, but maybe when we renew our vows, we'll have little tag team belts or something.
Yeah, there you go.
I don't know. But yeah, man. So that's pretty much how the show ends. Flair holds the title high. Well, actually, before he holds the title, Brian Pillman, the loose cannon. Which, by the way, take a drink every time the announcers call him the loose cannon. Really,
yeah.
Hammering that one home. But he takes the world title belt, whips Macho Man like really hard with this belt over and over again, and then he gives it to Flair, and then they walk off, and then the show kind of ends. But yeah, so Flair's on top, Luger, Sting, who knows, and the Japanese are inferior. So any other thoughts on Starrcade 1995?
Well, like you said, the structure of the matches was a little off, I thought, but some of the early matches, especially when we watch wrestling today, and if we understand that a lot of this high flying, a lot of this Japanese stuff, and with the Benoit and Eddie Guerrero and even Alex Wright, all this was starting to build momentum into that cruiserweight division and seeing these different styles and different wrestlers. Because, once that cruiserweight division got going on Nitro, you would see the luchadors that would come in. You would see Japanese wrestlers that would come in. And it really sort of set the tone for what we see today. Because, I still tell people, go back and watch the Halloween Havoc with Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero, and that match would hold up against matches today,
Absolutely.
in my opinion. And some of the things that they were doing, I think didn't Benoit do a couple, or was it Liger did on Benoit, an actual dragon suplex?
Yeah, there were a couple of those, like tiger suplexes and all that stuff on this show.
And, and you think today we still see those type of moves. So I think this was some of the matches were really good. And like I said, the Forerunner, but just the way the pay-per-view was structured, I didn't care for. And then, like I said, at the end, just being a personal fan of the Horsemen, I was glad to see this iteration to come together and be united and beat someone down. And so that was very good on a personal level, but it was okay. I've seen a lot worse pay-per-views, I'll say that, from WCW.
Yeah, legitimately, this is probably the pay-per-view of the year for WCW. And it's almost in a way kind of a throwaway pay-per-view. Not a throwaway pay-per-view, but I mean, you definitely get the feeling that they're like preparing for 1996. Like you said, they're kind of testing the waters with the cruiserweight stuff, that style, establishing a new champion and Ric Flair. But I mean, in-ring wise, I mean, it started off hot, kind of petered out, but like I said, 1995 WCW, you're probably not going to get a lot better than this. So, yeah, it was a fun watch for WCW 1995, but and that's the truth, the heel truth. But speaking of which, once again, Ted, thank you for making the time to check out the show and come on and discuss it. Where can everybody find you and listen to Ted the Hillbilly Heel and the Heel Truth?
The Heel Truth, you can find me on Twitter at Hillbilly Heel. You can find the Heel Truth wherever you find your audio listening pleasure: Spotify, Google, Apple, and all sorts of iHeart and anything like that. Still the number one podcast in Antarctica. We're actually doing pretty good on the Ireland charts. So, just listen. You can hit me up there. And, if you got any suggestions or anything like that, we appreciate it. And I said on one of my recent shows there, be on the lookout. I've got a possible meet and greet in Antarctica coming up later this year, and also be a keynote speaker at a podcast symposium and workshop also in Antarctica. So if you're going to be
Okay.
at the South Pole later on this year, look me up.
The South Pole, isn't that? Are you familiar with Santa Claus from WWF?
He's on the North Pole.
I thought no,
He's in the North Pole.
Santa's in the North Pole. Xanta with an X is from the South Pole because he's
Okay.
crazy. This ball.
Well,
yeah.
See, I haven't gotten to do it on my podcast yet, but eventually I'm going to do a whole episode on my time as an independent wrestler in the Arctic Wrestling Federation.
Oh,
where I wrestled for years. I was a tag team specialist. I was known as Legolas, and my tag team partner was Saint Nick. And we were the L's of Destruction.
Wow. Well, I mean, well renowned. I mean, the Antarctic International Championship. I think that might be an AEW title, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, we had a long-standing feud with the Polar Bear Express, Polar Bear 1 and 2, which were real polar bears, by the way.
They weren't working polar bears?
No, they were shoot polar bears, okay? They were shoot polar bears. They were managed by Yukon Cornelius. Great rivalry. So
I'm starting to think you might be making this all up, Ted.
No, baby. There's the real truth, and there's the heel truth. Okay.
Ooh, if that's not a way to end a show. Once again, thank you to Theodore for joining me on this episode. Awesome time with Ted. Go check out the Heel Truth podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow him on Twitter at the Hillbilly Heel. All of his info in the description below. Apronbump.com for all my full episodes. You know the drill. Apron Bump on all social medias. I finally changed my for the longest time. My Instagram was apron_bump. Don't know why. Didn't know you can just change it, so I did. And for some reason, I just assumed somebody else had it, but nobody did. So now everything's the same. Everything's Apron Bump across the board. Go follow me on TikTok too. Twitter, of course, is probably where I'm most active these days. There's a Facebook too. If you're a 43-year-old mom playing Candy Crush listening to this, go check me out on Facebook. And yeah. Thank you for joining me on this journey of 1995. It's been a how can I describe this year in a way in the layman, in a way that everybody can kind of understand. I mean, the best way to understand is to go back into the archives and listen to them all. But if you just want me to describe it now, shit. Like if you were like, just hypothetically, you were like, say you're like at an amusement park or something, you're waiting on a ride, maybe a water slide of sorts. You're waiting in line. You get a little anxious. You get a little nervous because you're not, you're 11 years old and you're kind of scared of these kind of rides. So you're waiting in line for a long time and you have to take a shit, but you don't have time. You try to keep it in, but it kind of slides out, but you think you got it stuck in your shorts. So it's okay. But then it slides down your leg and you see it plop on the concrete, but nobody else saw it fall out of your shorts. So you keep walking along and then somebody sees the shit and they're like, wow, somebody took a dump right on the concrete. And you're like, yeah, that's weird. So you keep walking along like nobody ever noticed. And then you get to the slide and your friend that you're with notice a skid mark on your calf. And then you go through the water slide and you continue on like that never happened again. That's kind of what wrestling in 1995 felt like watching it. If you're an 11 years old. I mean, this is hypothetical. I mean, it's whatever. But I'm hard.
Yeah.
It's the hardest. Talk around and disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what hard is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can knock it. Let's get it started. It's the hardest. Talk around and disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what hard is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can knock it. Let's get it started.